Okay, thank you. Good evening and welcome to the June 18th meeting of the Ames Community School District Board of Directors. I'll take approval of the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved by Bankin, seconded by Rosser. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 6-0. Director Beerbaum, will you please read the mission statement?
The mission of the Ames Community Schools is to ensure that all learners develop the knowledge, skills, attitudes, values, a personal esteem necessary to grow in and shape a changing society.
Thank you very much. I will go ahead and read the statement on discussion items in public forum. Residents of the district, students attending the district, parents or guardians of students attending the district, and district staff members may address the board about any topic relevant to the district, whether on the current agenda or not. Those who wish to speak must sign up at the beginning of the meeting. Speaker participation is limited to 3 minutes once per item. The views and opinions of citizens addressing the board do not necessarily reflect those of the board, district administration, or staff. Speakers are to remember that Iowa law prohibits the board from discussing specific employees, students, or their performance. Student speakers will state their name and school, others will state their name and address. And item 3 on the agenda is just an update on tennis courts. I just wanted to get back to all of you. We did have a discussion about tennis courts last meeting, and the City Council last week did move to move away from the lease agreement, and so we are, of course, we're working on our new tennis courts. So for us, while there are a couple things that we need to work through in terms of demolition costs and the memorial pavers, we did have a brief discussion about public access to those tennis courts, and I wanted to just revisit that real quick. Dr. Taylor, if you could provide for us some information on how our other outdoor venues, what opportunities look like for that for the public.
Almost all of course, our buildings, as we're looking at outdoors, our playgrounds are part of the city park. And Park and Rec department. Actually, they kind of bought into it a little bit. Part of our agreement was when we built the new buildings and remodeled the others that the city was going to donate up to $64,000 per building for playground equipment if we could also designate that as a city park so that people could use it during the summer and after school hours. As a city park, they are naturally closed then at 10:30 in the evening, so it works out kind of well, I think, for our tennis courts and for most of our other facilities. This is not necessarily true, if you can imagine, for our baseball and softball complex. However, those are kind of off limits. But all of our other facilities that we have outside, which primarily involves just the playground equipment, is a city park, so people can use it, and kids can use it during the weekends and during the evenings and during the summer.
Is there, the City Council, one of the members did mention that, what is the direction for public access? And I did tell Mayor Hala that we would keep them posted on, because the tennis courts formerly were a project with the city. So I just wanted to provide us the opportunity. Can you give me an indication of where you are on providing public access to these tennis courts?
I would be in favor of providing public access. Yeah. Yes, because this is how it is now, right? Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, and I think we would be the only. Oh, there's Brookside. Yeah. Right. There's Brookside, but in this side of town, it would probably.
And Inez Grove.
Inez Grove. Mm-hmm. I think it's good form to me. Okay. I would be content with that.
I would agree. I feel similarly. I think that our schools are community schools, and we've always welcomed the community into our spaces, and I see no reason to be different with these tennis courts.
Okay.
I would fully support it. I mean, part of the public that would be accessing it would be our students after practices and things, so it seems like it'd be a great idea.
I think part of why we're up here, I mean, we want to work with the city. We want to be on good terms with them, and we want to gel, you know, and provide services that are very similar. So I would definitely be in favor.
Anything else?
Sounds good. The only question I think we need to resolve, I fully support having it open to the public, not unlike our tracks and other, in addition to the playground equipment, but we don't lock any of their facilities other than the baseball fields for some obvious reasons. So definitely I would support that. I do think we need to, not tonight, but think about the lighting situation, whether we're going to provide lighting that members of the public would be able to turn on a timer, and it would go off automatically after a certain period of time. I know our current construction of the facility is going to allow for that to be added later, so we don't need to decide this, tonight or even in the near future, but that's a discussion that we need to decide regarding that and get some input from neighbors and such and see how they feel about that.
Great, and I appreciate you bringing up the lights, because that would be an expense, and so that's something that we can discuss in the future. So thank you for that feedback. I appreciate hearing that. Wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page on that. So any comments from the public on the tennis courts? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to commencement robes for board members.
So we attended graduation a couple weeks ago, I guess it was. I have no idea when that was, but a while back. And I think we noticed that we didn't look the same, that our robes were different, and so I think there was a desire. I think being a new board member, I wasn't sure what to expect, and so I thought we would all have the same regalia. And after speaking to several of the board members, I think there is a desire that we, in the future, do have matching regalia for a variety of reasons. I think as a district, we want to communicate that we are a unit, and that we all have the same voice and position, and that we are all here in support of the Ames Community School District, regardless of how we came to be in these positions. And so it seemed like an easy thing we could do to show support. I know there is we're not clear exactly how to get it done, so it's possible that this could go to committee, could go to equity or TLC. I know equity is incredibly busy, and I would not want to waste anyone's time. Waste is probably not the right word with this particular issue. I don't know about TLC. I did reach out to staff. I spoke to Kathy, I believe Kathy Packard at the high school, who worked with our regalia. She directed me to Spence, so I've had several conversations with Spence today, and he is the person who is in charge of the way graduation runs, so it would really be ultimately up to him, and so he'll be the point person if we decide to go that way. And he said that he really just didn't feel comfortable making the decision for the board about what we look like, which is fair. I understand that that's probably too much pressure to put on him. What I said was that my sense was we want probably something easy. So I was thinking black robes with, everybody gets a hood, and the hoods are Ames High colors, either orange and black or orange and white. What he said is that it would depend on what was available at Johnston's, which is the company that rents the regalia. So I figured if we just gave him at least some direction, he would feel much more comfortable deciding, unless someone had a particular preference.
I personally think that sounds like a great idea. I mean, as we talked about, that type of visual, having all of us the same, Ames High colors. I think one other thing to consider, and we had discussed this, is maybe for the superintendent, some additional regalia that makes it obvious that, they're the superintendent.
Right.
We could similarly think about maybe for Spence. But I'm fine with, if Spence just wanted this type of feedback, if we could direct him to, come back with some options that we could think about before the next graduation, that sounds great.
I know they have, just for the board members, we could just do, because I'm thinking also about cost, we got to pay for this, we could just do the plain black robes, and for the district leader, they have the fancy cording that you could put on it, right? So there are ways that you could distinguish that. I know that Ames High colors are traditionally orange and black, but I know sometimes orange and white can be a substitute, so perhaps the superintendent can have a hood that's a different color, so maybe she can be orange and black, and we can be orange and white, or whatever. So I agree that we should find a way to distinguish that. Well, I mean, we should probably ask her because she probably has her own regalia and she might not want to do that. I don't know if we want to impose that as the expectation on the superintendent, but if she's certainly willing, then I think that's just a conversation.
I really like that idea. I know we talked about it too, and it did feel like we didn't have like a unified front sitting up there, and that could also be construed as distracting. So to have us all be up there as a unified front, and it would look really professional, but it would also, I think, convey a separate message. I like that idea.
So I would suggest that we send this to Spence, since he is the staff member who is in charge of graduation, and ask him to provide some options. I don't believe we want to make it policy, so that's why it's not in the policy. Certainly, either one of those committees could address it, but how about we start with Spence, and then if we feel like it needs to go to potentially teaching and learning, because it's an academic thing, we could certainly direct it there. Is that comfortable? Okay, great, we'll do that. Thank you.
So I'll follow up with Spence, if that's okay, unless you wanted to do it.
I was going to have...
Jenny should actually.
Okay. I think that, well, this is the hard thing.
The superintendent should
We
do
are
that.
in a unique period right now, aren't we?
A little
So
bit, but
how
yeah,
about-
but
how
I
about
talked
we-
to Spence about it today.
You did,
He's
okay.
willing to put some options together.
Okay, so you've already talked to
Yeah.
him. Okay, so if you want to let him know, that's how we
Sure.
decided to go.
You can
Okay.
follow up with Monique.
Yes, that's fine.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Moving on to the public forum, and first on the list, Angela Shaw.
All right. Angela Shaw, 1707 Duff Avenue. And today I'm speaking to you about the cancellation of summer school for the high school. I'm speaking today on behalf of my family and my concerns about the cancellation. This is personal to me because my daughter, early on, we knew that she was not going to be successful in geometry. She met with her school counselor multiple times over the spring, and she was provided with 2 options for retaking the class. The first option would be taking Apex class during the summer, which would allow her to take 1 course, meet twice a week. It was an online course, but there'd be a teacher present twice a week, 2 hours each session, so she could have hands-on help with the class. The second option would be for her to double up her math next year so that she'd be on course to graduate. Well, of course, that was not an option. She already struggled with math the first time, and doubling up on math was not an option. With that, with her discussion with her counselor, it came to the conclusion that she do Apex this summer. She is a manager at her job, so she worked with her job to work around that schedule that was provided to her by her counselor. On June the 4th, the sign-up sheet went out, and it said, please contact Ashley to sign up. Within an hour, we received an email that said that summer classes would be canceled due to budget, and that they would only offer it for those that are in the ALP program. So I come to you asking several questions. Why was the budget not provided for the summer program for high schoolers? And number 2, will the summer school program be provided in the future as an option for high school students? Number 3, why were the school counselors not advised of this? Because she had been meeting with them faithfully to make sure that she was in good standing, it would be. So why wasn't she provided or even given that option if it wasn't an option for her, a real option? Number 4 is, how many other students who are going to be affected by this? This is affecting graduation because now she's under the pressure that we don't know next year if they're going to have it as an option. So how many other students are going to be having to double up on any of their classes, whether it's science, social studies, or what have you, because summer school is not being offered? So what is the school going to be doing to ensure that now that these students have to double up on these subjects, that they're going to get the added support? Because now I'm already looking at getting tutors because she's got to take 2 math classes at the same time, one of which she failed the first time. So I'm asking the board, since you have approved the budget, why was this not included in the budget or taken out of the budget to not allow for summer school at the Ames High School? And I'm more concerned not just with my child, but with the community. Who is going to be impacted? These are lives. This could possibly be graduations that could be delayed, or just added doubling up on these classes that they failed one over a time. So I asked the board, I want answers. I want answers to why this occurred and what in the budget, because I'm looking at all these budget items always. Who messed up, or why was it taken out? Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Next up, Amy Edwards.
Hi, my name is Amy Edwards, and I'm at 1204 Arizona Ave. I'm coming before you tonight just to make you aware, and maybe you have received notification on this, but in any case, in Exhibit A3, the reappointment of custodial, maintenance, EAs, and media techs. There is a name listed that is not to be reappointed because their family is moving, and so I'm not sure how that's going to affect this as an action item. And the concern then comes before you then that we want that position retained for Sawyer so that another individual and candidate can be hired for that position. The specific position that we're talking about is the Special Ed Level 2, Michelle Vanderwoody's position. She and her family are moving. So I'm not sure if that was just an inadvertent mistake or if something got crossed along the ways. But she won't be back to Sawyer. But as families have been discussing, that's definitely a position we don't want to see pulled because we don't have someone in there yet. So I just wanted to make you all aware of that on the exhibit, that there was that incorrect statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. We'll go ahead and move on to consent items. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
A second.
Got the minutes from the meetings that were held on June 4, 7, and 11, claims and payroll from Ms. Chris, along with her financial report for May of 2018. You'll notice the personnel report and the addendum, which was revised since the original report went out. I wanted to also highlight on the original personnel report the approval for appointment of Brian Carrico as the associate principal at Ames High, and Mr. Broderick Pankey, which comes in as a grounds 1 technician, which we need tremendously. But the addendum also highlights the approval for the appointment of Ms. Amy Lane as Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and also a resignation from Ms. Erin Miller, whom you all know is one of our teachers on special assignment and literacy, who is resigning her position to actually accept the C&I role for Dr. Ross with the Webster City Schools. So those are the additions on the personnel report. For the addendum, there's also a large number of gifts here, which include cash in the amount of $191 from Chartwells to the high school HOP program, or HOPE program, cash in the amount of $4,668.04 from the Sawyer PTO, which is actually dispersed throughout the school year. Much of it was for Story County Conservation field trip expenses and miscellaneous expenses. Cash in the amount of $13,341.46 from the Edwards PTO throughout the school year. Mostly field trips again, makerspace equipment items, balls for recess, classroom supplies, etc., or et al., including all other miscellaneous expenses. $12,143.63 from the Meeker PTO for items spent at Meeker for the 2017-2018 school year, and cash in the amount of $594.55 There's a list for board perusal of the senior parents that donated the remainder of their student lunch funds to help for the overdue lunch accounts at Ames High School. Also on the personnel report, you will notice that we have some contracts and agreements which include the Panorama survey. If you recall the software purchase, the ladies that were here last meeting to talk about Panorama, actually it was Sue and Brandon Schroth. The agreement with Good News Tour and Travel for the choir trip, April 26 through 29, with from Peggy Dieter, who is the high school choral director. Renewal of the agreement for Grantwood Software Services. An agreement with Coca-Cola for beverages at the Ames High athletic events. The amendments to the agreement with Rosalind Mackey Harris Design Services for door frame and hardware, floor and soffit replacement at Northwood Preschool Center, and ballistic glazing replacement at all of the elementary schools. Also, 2 other agreements, including one with ATW Training Solutions for Administrator Staff Development from Ms. Chris, and an agreement with McFarland Clinic for athletic trainers for Ames Middle School athletic events.
I'm going to abstain from the consent items because I work for Atlantic Bottling Coca-Cola, so I don't feel that it's appropriate for me to vote on this.
Thank you. It's been moved by Bankin, seconded by Beerbaum. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Abstaining?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Thank you. Action item 11, general obligation bonds.
I move to adopt the resolution appointing Bankers Trust Company of Des Moines, Iowa to serve as paying agent, bond registrar, and transfer agent, approving the paying agent, bond registrar, and transfer agent, approving the paying agent, bond registrar, and transfer agent agreement, and authorizing the execution of same.
Second.
Moved by Bankin, seconded by Perez. Discussion? Chris, do you want to give us just an overview, because we have 4 different roll call votes that are under general obligation bonds, so maybe you explain everything for us here.
Right, so this is the final actions on the $5 million of, or not to exceed $5 million. If you remember, it got resized last meeting to $4,995,000. So there's always, it always takes about 3 meetings to get through bonds, whether it's sales tax bonds or general obligation. So this is the final set of actions. We always have a paying agent. The board has to approve the tax exempt certificate that makes these bonds tax exempt for the holders of the bond, so their interest is just not subject to taxes. There are certain disclosures that we are required to make throughout the life of the bonds for certain material events. An example would be a change in bond rating. So you're approving the form of the continuing disclosure certificate, and then finally you're just adopting the resolution to issue the bonds, which will be will close on June 28th.
Chris, I have a question about how often are we going to be doing this?
Probably not this small, but I would gather we'll do this once or twice a fiscal year from now on. There's certain advantages to not issuing more than $10 million in a calendar year, so we will not issue any more bonds this year. We'll see how far we get into design and when we get it bid, whether we'd need to issue next summer before the fiscal year ends. If they stay bank qualified, there's a little less hoops to go through, and that's if it's 10 millions or less in the calendar year. This will probably be the last one that will be able to stay bank qualified, because we not only have to issue the GO bonds laddered throughout construction, we're going to have to issue sales tax, well, depending on action later on, but sales tax revenue bonds for the pool portion of the facility, probably in the near future as well. So I think we were issuing bonds over the next 4 years, anywhere from $5 million up to $20 million at a time.
Do you generally stay with the same bank, or do you just go out again and?
Well, we went out for bid. At the last meeting, we presented the bids, and I'm going to have to look it up to see the UMB Bank NA, I think was the name of it, won the bid. So it's an electronic bid process. So as far as who buys the bonds, no, we won't stay with it. unless they would happen to win again through a bidding process. And that's a blind bidding process, so they don't know who's voting against them or what they're voting. If you're talking about Bankers Trust is pretty much the only entity in Iowa that does paying agent bond registrar. We have all our bonds there. They're very convenient. They're very good to work with. They take the money right out of our bank when it's due. They make sure I have all the information and I can call them and get anything I need. So it will always be Bankers Trust as the paying agent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Chris on this? Okay. It's been moved by Benkin, seconded by Perez, and we will vote on roll call.
Rosser, aye.
Benkin, aye.
Colton, aye.
Franzen, aye.
Beerbaum, aye.
Perez, aye.
Passes 6-0. Item 2.
I move to approve of the approval of the form of tax exemption certificate.
Second.
Moved by Colton, seconded by Benkin. Discussion? Vote on roll call.
Rosser, aye.
Benkin, aye.
Colton, aye.
Franzen, aye.
Beerbaum, aye.
Perez, aye.
Passes 6-0. Item 3.
I move to approval of the form of the continuing disclosure certificate.
Second.
Moved by Perez, seconded by Beerbaum. Discussion? Vote on roll call.
Rosser, aye.
Benkin, aye.
Colton, aye.
Franzen, aye.
Beerbaum, aye.
Perez, aye.
Passes 6-0. Item 4.
I move to adopt the resolution authorizing the issuance of $4,995,000 general obligation school bonds series 2018.
Second.
Moved by Beerbaum, seconded by Rosser. Discussion? Vote on roll call.
Rosser, aye.
Benkin, aye.
Colton, aye.
Franzen, aye.
Beerbaum, aye.
Perez, aye.
Passes 6-0. Thank you. Item 12, use of sales tax revenue bonds for the new high school swimming pool.
I move the board approve the use of saved dollars to pay the portion of the OPN architects and story construction contracts related to the design of a new swimming pool on the high school site.
Second.
Moved by Rosser, seconded by Beerbaum. Discussion?
Did we discuss this? I felt like we did. We were over there. Remember, was that right?
We were over there.
I just want to make sure.
Yes.
Right.
Do you want to give, one of you want to give a description of what we're doing here?
You did discuss it in work session.
Yeah.
Director Rosser had mentioned that while the referendum passed that approved the use of GO bonds for the high school, that the board had never actually taken action to approve use of sales tax to pay for the pool portion of the project. You will have many other options as we go through to vote on the actual construction and so forth, but we've already issued the contracts to OPN and Story, and they're going to be billing me soon for the pool portion, so we thought we'd get approval to use sales tax on hand to pay for that design.
Just want to make sure we're doing it right.
Any other questions? All right, been moved by Rosser, seconded by Beerbaum. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes 6-0. Item 13, reappointment of custodial maintenance staff, EAs and media techs.
I move the board approve the staff appearing on the attached lists be reappointed for the 2018-2019 school year.
Second.
Moved by Perez, seconded by Colton. Discussion?
I'd like to move to amend it to make the correction that Mrs. Edwards brought to our attention. Or we can't do that?
No.
If someone,
Oh, I'm sorry.
The
Go
reason
ahead.
for that is I'll get back to Ms. Edwards on this one, but as of right now, I don't know that we have the resignation from this person.
We haven't been notified.
Actually,
not
I've
to
got
my
some
knowledge.
information. I've been doing a little bit of checking over here on
Okay.
that particular question, and evidently the staffing reduction is through attrition because of enrollment in the program, and it's actually a level 1 EA that is being reduced. It's not a level 2 EA. So I'm not sure where the confusion lies, but it's my understanding at this point in time that it's based on student staffing, which is how EAs are assigned. through special education. So there's no purpose in amending or changing things tonight, and if there's any additional, that will be brought back to the board.
And we'll go back to the board on whether we have.
Right, if she does resign, then we would address that in a future meeting. Okay, got it.
Well, if there is a concern, is who should Ms. Edwards get clarity from?
If I may make one more comment, I just got clarification. It's because there's been an addition of a special education teacher, so having a level 1 EA, we've actually increased the number of teachers as opposed to EAs in the special education program at Sawyer. So that's why the EA is not being rehired after one's leaving.
And I will get back to Ms. Edwards.
And just as a matter of practice, we'll probably have a good number of these people resign over the summer as we find out that either spouses are leaving college and so forth. It's just part of the process. They'll turn in a resignation. It'll come on another personnel report who their replacement hire is. So the fact that we don't have a resignation letter for a specific person when this went to the board doesn't change our process of how we operate all summer. Does that answer? You're still looking puzzled.
It doesn't, but I guess there's something that I can't get to until the end. I think there is, particularly at Sawyer, there just seems to be a lot of confusion, and so I'm trying to find out if someone has a question, particularly about staffing, who should they direct it to? Like if they've gone to the principal or whatever, they're not getting an answer, who should they direct it to? Should it go to the director of C&I? Should it go to the superintendent?
I think I have to go to the director of human resources, and that's special ed, and then they can go to Darcy Cousins, of course, who's director of special ed.
So they should start with, so if someone at Sawyer, so Dr. Ross did an excellent job of explaining, if someone is still unclear, they should then send an email to Lisa.
Correct.
And if they don't get and don't feel like they're getting an answer from Lisa, then they should go to Darcy Cousins. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
So there's no amendment. It was moved by Perez, seconded by Colton. Any more discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes 6-0. Item 14.
I move the board authorize Story Construction Company to purchase and administer submittal exchange services as a reimbursable expense for the new high school design and construction in the amount of $54,000 for 60 months.
Second?
Moved by Colton, seconded by Beerbaum. Do one of you want to explain, please?
Sure, I think Chris and I will team up on this one. Submittal Exchange Services is an online service that actually controls or keeps track of all budgeting relative to construction projects, change orders. We used it for all of the elementary buildings, and I thought it was pretty phenomenal. It works very easy for payroll for Chris.
Carol did it as part of payroll, but doesn't affect payroll. Yeah. It's an online way of streaming the approval process. So everything's loaded into the submittal exchange. The construction contractor can sign off, the architect can sign off, Jerry can sign off, Story can sign off, and then once we have all those electronic approvals, we can then process the payment. So instead of paper going back and forth to all those people, everything's done online.
And where does this money come from? What?
It'll come out of the GO bond revenues.
Okay.
Was this an anticipated expense in the $100,000 in the bond for the high school? Yes, sorry. Yes, sorry. Cheapest high school ever. In the 100, my brain can't even fathom, right? Was it was an anticipated expense there? Okay.
It just wasn't part of Story Construction's their contract. We anticipated it as an expense needed to be done, but rather than the district buying it, Story's going to buy it because they're going to manage it.
Sure, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I guess I do have one more question. I'm sorry. I'm really cheap. So I guess it's hard for me to understand. So we're spending $54,000 to buy a software system that handles change orders. Is that right? No? What are we buying?
It handles a lot more than that.
Okay.
It handles all the, not only change orders, but all the pay apps. There's a very specific process when you're approving a payment of a construction. The contractor has to, will load their pay app, what they're requesting for payment into this system. The architect will then go in and review it. They will ensure that the work that the contractor says they're doing has been done, that any materials they're storing on site are on site. They will then sign off on it. Then Story Construction will kind of go through the same process and approve it with their eyes. And then finally Jerry approves it on behalf of the district, and then we process it for payment.
And I know that with the other expenses that we're required to approve, I don't know if the community knows this, but the board members rotate and we go into the main office and we sit down and go through all the expenses. So a board member won't be a part of this process. Jerry will be.
As far as approval, once we cut the check, that's when the board, yes, it will be on the list of checks that you approve when you come in and review.
So we'll see the expenses that come through here will be on that list.
So you won't see the 54,000 other than through Story Construction's bill.
Right.
But then when we process, when that pay app is approved through all the parties, then you will see that pay app and the check that goes along with that app to the contractor.
Okay.
One of the things that I think that you should anticipate seeing is Story Construction will come before the board to give updates during this entire project. And as they do, you're going to see submittal exchanges. They are keeping track of all construction expenses.
And is 60 months going to be the life of the project?
About, yeah.
Let's hope. Yeah.
Okay.
We may need a little bit better weather than we've been getting the last couple of days, but yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, it's been moved by Colton, seconded by Beerbaum. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes 6-0. Items from the board.
I had an item. I don't know how to, I don't know what it, because I guess we can't talk about anything in this particular section, but just a concern was brought to me by a parent, and maybe you can help me figure out how to help that parent. So I think it's particular to Sawyer, and I have had several things come to me, and I think, as we just saw, I think sometimes there's misinformation, or we're just not clear as parents how to get good information, and it relates back to the bond issue, right? So we had a bond to expand our elementary schools because Edwards in particular was overcrowded or filling up. And so what the community in Sawyer is hearing or experiencing is that our building went through renovation under the assumption that we would be moving to a 3-section building, and that our classrooms wouldn't be as crowded and our children would have more spaces. And I think what it feels like is that that's not what's happening, that some of our sections are still only 2 sections and not 3 sections, and that I think what's maybe more concerning for some families is we're having new people moving in over the summer and finding out just through general chit chat that those people are being sent over to Edwards instead of coming to Sawyer. And so it's unclear why Sawyer is not at the 3-section stage. Is Edwards full? Is it not full? Why are we sending people there? I think there's just some confusion, and I don't know how to help those parents find good answers. I don't know who to send them to. Can you tell me who I should at least send them to, or if their concerns are founded? I mean, how are we, is there a way to give parents information? You know, I'm sure there's reasonable answers for all of this. Like, how do we communicate with those families, or who should their point person be?
They can send them to me initially.
Okay.
For the next couple of days. I'm trying to help them out a little bit.
Tim's on the time clock. Okay.
Dr. Taylor, can you speak in general terms how that works with our enrollment numbers and how Barb Peterson works through that as new students come to register? Because we know new students are registering, right?
Sure.
People are moving into Ames
right.
all the time, but especially over the summer.
We haven't had as much difficulty recently because of our newer schools and the way that they were built, so we have some additional space, but they are starting to get crowded because of construction that's happening within the Edwards neighborhood and within, I project it, and I would tell you that one of the things you want to be concerned about is the Mitchell neighborhood with all the construction just on the east side of South Duff. I would anticipate sometime in the future there's going to be some larger development to the south of that building. So as new people come into the district, we do keep a running track of the number of students that we have in each of our sections, trying not to go over 25 and trying to keep it less than that if we can in our K1 buildings or our K1 classrooms. At times we do have some overcrowding that's happened at Mitchell, and we've sent kids to Edwards to help pick up some of that. I'm not, right off the top of my head, I'm not aware that we've been sending any kids from Sawyer to Edwards because of some overcrowding there, because we've had the space. And I know that the Sawyer building, after the boundaries were changed to Lincoln Way, it did impact where they were at, but we did reduce them to 2 sections for a while because they were housed in the old Edwards building,
That's
or
right.
the camp, as they called it, Camp Sawyer at that time. So we were able to house more kids at Edwards and then move them back. At the current time, we've got 4 classes of 3 sections at Edwards. Next year, there'll be 2 classes, which will be grades 2 and 3 that will just have 2 sections. So the other 4 sections are all 3 at the current time. One of those, both of those 2-section classes rooms, however, if you think about it, are at 47 and 48. And just to make that real easy, if you've got 2 sections at 48, you got 24 kids in that classroom. So as we're beginning to look at that, that's one of the buildings where I know that there's also some development that's happening further east or further west of Sawyer building, which could impact that one in the future too.
I'm going to just provide it only because I'm peeking over his shoulder. He was speaking about Sawyer there, that there's 2 sections that are, 2 levels that are 2 sections, and the rest will be 3 sections. It looks like you all have a copy coming. But that was Sawyer that he was referring to. Yeah. So. And maybe for the good of the public, what we are looking at is our elementary classroom numbers for all of our elementaries, and then the different numbers of sections that we have at each of the grade levels at all of those. And our district has done a very good job of, specifically we do it around registration time and then in the fall to keep a close eye on and keeping us, the board, abreast of movement that we may have in numbers and so forth. So we have the information if you have questions for us on that. So that helps.
One of the interesting things that is taking place at the current time is that we're trying to keep track of families. As was just mentioned earlier, families do move in and out during the summer in Ames a lot more fluid than they do in most other communities, obviously, because of Iowa State University. We will see a decline in those numbers during the summer, but when August 1 gets here is when we start to see another influx of new people coming in. So you have to be just a little bit patient, taking a look at the numbers, determining sections, and that's why it's always handy to have some contingency available so that you can add additional classrooms.
Is it possible if a family that, let's just say this has happened, that a family that was told they would have to go to Edwards and then the sections are reassessed in the fall, that family would then come back to the homeschool?
They always have the right to come back, yes.
Okay, but it's not, they would have to ask for it. It wouldn't be something like we said, oh, never mind, you're going to be going back to Sawyer.
No, Barb, I think, does contact
She would
them.
contact, okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it, thank you.
Okay.
Any other comments from the board?
Yes. Dr. Taylor, this is your last meeting.
Yeah.
I'd like to start off with saying how much it's been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you.
You've always been professional. We haven't always seen eye to eye on everything, but that's okay. You've always been very professional regarding that. I have really learned a lot from you and really respect your dedication to public education. And I know you've been, over the past few years, kind of quietly in your own way, talking about the warning signs out there of the threats to public education in our state. So we're going to be working on that. in the future, and rumor has it you might, tip your toe into that now and then, and I hope you do, because I think your experience and dedication to public education for all these years will be a voice that will be very much respected in that discussion in the future.
Thank you.
Again, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Enjoy your time on the links.
I will.
And with your lovely wife, too.
Thank you very much, Liz. Appreciate that.
I have a couple of things. First, I want to thank Angela for her comment. I can see why that's frustrating, especially for somebody that it has been struggling with it and catching up in summer. If you have that ahead of time, if you have that thought ahead of time, it helps, but then not to have it. I can see that, how it's frustrating. So thank you for bringing it up. I did not know, so thank you. The second thing is that I want to make the board aware of, I've been getting emails and conversations with high school teachers that they're very concerned about the class size that is coming in, the freshman class size. And I remember them when they were in middle school. There was a big class size. So I think that's going to be on our radar for perhaps additional teachers, because it sounds like they will need it. And third, thank you, Dr. Taylor. I guess I didn't look at the calendar, and it is your last meeting. Thank you. Thank you for everything. And America needs public schools.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
I also wanted to say thank you, Angela, for bringing that up, because I wasn't aware that it was canceled either, so that's definitely something I want to look into a little bit more myself. And also, Dr. Taylor, you have been just a wealth of information. You have given us so much knowledge when it comes to all of those just really difficult formulas when it comes to calculating budget and all of these other things. And it's helped a lot to really understand the inner workings of all the different funding sources and the rules and all of that stuff. That's been wonderful. And your door's always been open, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I have a couple things. First, I want to make note that under the gifts, we had a total of 3 of our PTOs have donated $30,000 to our school district this year, and I really want to let them know how much we really appreciate. That's only 3. There's 2 other organizations out there that have done, and we really rely. You talk about community support and family support and parent support, and that is that provides so much for our school. So I just want to note that 3 of our elementary schools we have here, and I don't think we've had the other 2, but we really appreciate that. I'm pleased to see in the personnel report that our staff is continuing to move forward with finding an assistant principal and director of curriculum and instruction. We are in a bit of a transition, and so I appreciate that they're all moving forward with getting our team put together. Dr. Ross, I think this is also your last meeting, right? That's what I thought, and I want to thank you for all of your hard work. I know that we have talked about it when we approved your resignation, but really want to wish you well in Webster City. I'm not very happy that you're taking Erin Miller as the director of CNI, but that just goes to show the quality of staff that we have here, and I'm thrilled for Erin, because while she's done so much for us, I know that she'll be a great team member for you in Webster City, so we wish both of you the best. Dr. Taylor, we had a send-off for you as a community. I don't know when it was, but and I had an opportunity to thank you there. But one of the things that I want to highlight from my comments as I was thinking about what do I say to this man who is now leaving us. We have anticipated this night and knowing. For all of you out there, when you are a superintendent of a school district, it is a very unique role because your bosses change. And in the last 8 years, I think Kim calculated for me, you've had 18 different bosses. We all have different personalities. We all have different lenses. We all have different professional experiences that we come to this position. And you have always worked in a very professional manner in a great sense of humility and grace, and I have always appreciated working with you. We haven't always disagreed. We've had some hard conversations, but I've really appreciated the work you've done, and I know that you are going to continue to push for public education in ways that you can in your retirement. So I wish you well on your golfing trip and all of your golfing times and retirement ahead of you. So thank you for your service to our school district.
Thank you. Actually, thanks to everybody for the great opportunity to be here and represent Ames and kids. And I am Lewis, working with a group of retired superintendents. Our idea is to become advocates for public education instead of sitting around and just being the retired guy across the street. We want to get deeply involved and see what we can do. And if our voice will carry any kind of weight with our legislature in trying to help preserve public education in Iowa. I don't know how many people knew it, but I've always found this kind of interesting. I was just a Iowa kid born and raised in Iowa Falls. My brother was a police officer in Ames in the early 60s, and during that time I worked as a custodian at Collegiate Manufacturing, which is downtown. So I've just kind of always been amazed every now and then to think that the place I was sweeping out, now here I am the superintendent in Ames in that community. But the other thing I'd say is as I traveled, I really wasn't seen. I knew when I walked into a room, I wasn't seen as Tim Taylor, I was Ames. And that was very important to me, so thank you very much.
Any other items from the staff?
I do want to mention that the calendar which you got, Kim didn't flip that over. You do have board meetings on July 9 and July 23rd, and Jenny Reisner will certainly be here for that. And Lewis wanted me to help remind people that if you were attending the ISB Fiscal Management Conference, that location has been changed to right here in Ames at Sheeman Auditorium, or Sheeman, and it is on Wednesday, July 18th. And if you are still interested in registering, it's ISB Fiscal Management Conference. Contact Kim and she will get you set up. Other than that, thank you to everybody, and thanks to the people that I've known and worked with so hard.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Rosser, seconded by Colton. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 6-0. Adjourned.